guys, and welcome back. It's been a hot minute since I've actually been on here and sat down and did a video for you guys, but I've been a little busy to say the least. I've got my sweet little baby boy kind of hanging out on our couch in our sitting area over here, and so I am excited to be jumping on to share my labor and delivery story with you guys. Our sweet little Aiden, he joined our family on June this 15th, so he just turned a month old yesterday. And I just had my little checkup and everything today. So we are a month in. It's so crazy to believe that a month has already gone by, but we have been loving every minute of it. He is just such a phenomenal little boy. We adore him so much. And I'm excited to jump in and share with you guys how he made his grand entrance into the world. If it's your first time joining me, I want to say welcome. My name is Miranda. I am a wife, a full-time working mom. I have a 3-year-old little daughter named Eliana, and then my husband and I, we just had our second little baby, Mr. Aiden. And so we are excited to now be a family of 4. Please subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Definitely give the video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and then let's jump in and get everything going for you guys. So I went in for my doctor's appointment on June the 15th. It was my 42-week appointment. I was going to do a 41-week update, and then I was going to do a 42-week update as well if I still had wound up being at that point. But I just didn't. We had a lot, of course, going on with prepping and getting ready for Aiden to actually be here, and then I was trying to finish up things at work. And honestly, things at the time, and they still are, just super crazy in the world, and so there's a lot going on, and I just wasn't really in the zone for doing videos and stuff like that at the time. And so that's why it took me why I didn't upload any kind of updates for you guys past my 40-week appointment update, and then why too it's taken me a little while to jump in and even be able to do this video for you guys as well. But as I was saying, I went in for my 42-week appointment on June the 15th. I had clocked in for work in the morning. I'm working from home right now due to, of course, everything going on with the virus. So I clocked in. I had told them I was going to come back, and that was my last day at work, because I was scheduled to be induced on Wednesday, June the 17th. We had set that up at my 41-week appointment. If I had not naturally just gone into labor on my own at that point, then I was scheduled to go and get induced. That Sunday beforehand, June the 14th, I had actually gone to the hospital and done all my blood work. They tested me for COVID, and then did all the paperwork and stuff like that too, just to get it all out of the way. So when the time came to actually go, we were ready and set and didn't have to worry about a whole lot. And so I went in for my appointment, and it was around, I think my appointment was at 10:30 that day, I want to say. And so I got there, went and checked in, and they hooked me up to do the non-stress test. It's pretty similar, the machine is pretty similar to what they hook you up to when you go into triage, and if you're in labor, you think you're in labor, and then also when you're in labor itself, what they hook you up to as well, there's a monitor that goes across the top of your belly to monitor the baby's heart rate, and then you have the monitor that goes across the top of your belly is to monitor your contractions, and then you have a monitor that goes across the bottom of your belly towards where the baby's heart rate would be, and then they monitor that. And it comes out on this little strip on the non-stress test, and they also give you this little clicker, and so every time that you feel movement, you're supposed to hit the button, and then it tracks it to go along with tracking your contractions and the baby's heart rate and stuff like that. They did that as well when I was at my 41-week appointment. They had me hooked up to it at my 41-week appointment for probably half an hour, and at this one I was on the machine for probably an hour, I want to say. So they got me all hooked up. The nurse took off, and I just was in the room with the monitors and everything all set up, trying to relax as much as I could, and just let the machine do its thing. My doctor came in probably about maybe 15-20 minutes after I had been on the machine. Of course, she was like, "I can't believe you're still pregnant. What are you doing here right now? Why have you not had this baby?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know, I'm feeling the same thing you are." And so she took a look at what had come out on the strip so far, and she just was like, "Okay, well, stay on the machine for a little bit longer, and then I'll be back to check on you again." And so the nurse came in the midst of this as well after my doctor had, and did the same thing, check, because the machine started messing up, and so she was there to check the machine, resituate everything so that it could keep tracking everything accurately. And then my doctor came back in, and at this point, I think I had been on the machine for probably close to an hour at this point. And so she comes in and she's looking at the strip, and because it had gotten a little messed up. And so she was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it's doing this. But she was looking at it and she was like, And she turns to me and she says, I'm not comfortable with you going home today. And of course, my heart drops because I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Like, what is she seeing on this strip that like I'm not freaking out about, because I could see his heart rate on the monitor, and it had one point where it dipped pretty low, but it picked back up and it had stayed, pretty consistent. And so I was like, well, what in the world's going on? And so she had asked me when she came in previously, when I was scheduled, and I told her that I was scheduled to be induced that Wednesday. And so this was a Monday that I was there. And so she was like, okay. And then so she comes back and she's like, I don't think I'm comfortable with you waiting 2 more days. Are you mentally prepared for me to tell you to go have a baby right now? And I just kind of was like, no, but I can get mentally prepared and get into the space that I need to be. And she said, okay, well then we're going to get you off the machine, and I want you to go ahead and go to the hospital into labor and delivery, tell them I sent you and that you are there to have a baby. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. And so the nurse comes in right after she walks out and, gets the machines off me and everything like that. And then basically the way that my doctor's office and the hospital is set up is they're just like right next to each other. So there's like, it's Tower 1 and then Tower 2. And so in Tower 1 is like where all the doctor's offices are, and then where they have their own little parking lot for the doctor's offices. And then there's the parking garage and the hospital. It's all like just in one little circle area type thing. And so basically I walked out to my car and just moved my car over to the parking garage. Of course, in the midst of this, the first person I called was Caleb, because he was at work that day as well. The way we had planned it out was that Monday was going to be both of our last day at work, to kind of, wrap up and get everything ready to go. Then that Tuesday, we were going to take a day to have like a family day with Eliana, and have like one last day of her being, the only sibling, and us being a little family of 3, to just make her feel extra special before I had to go and get induced on Wednesday. And so I was like in no way, shape, or form prepared or ready for this. I did not have my hospital bag with me. I didn't have Aiden's hospital bag with me. I had not finished packing the hospital bag because all my like last minute stuff needed to be thrown in there, like our phone chargers, and then I needed to throw in a couple of changes of clothes for Caleb, and then just like I had my little list, and I was going to do that on Tuesday, and get everything ready to go for us to go to the hospital. And so I didn't have that with me. I felt so horrible because Caleb didn't have any clothes packed for him, and so it was just kind of like this big whirlwind. I had to call Caleb, and tell him what was going on and what was happening. And so he, of course, rushed right over to the hospital from work. I had to call my job and tell my boss, hey, I'm not coming back today after all. I'm going to have a baby today. And then, of course, I called my mom and told her what was going on, and what was happening. And then Eliana was already with my in-laws because my mother-in-law takes care of her while I'm at work during the week. And so she was already with my in-laws, and they were the ones who were going to be taking care of her while we were in the hospital anyways. And so we were kind of situated and good to go on that end. And she was, okay, and obviously well taken care of. And Caleb, of course, told them everything that was going on, as far as like me having to go to the hospital and stuff like that. And so I get over to triage. I go walk in, and I check in with the people at the front, and I tell them, my doctor, I just got done with my doctor's appointment. I was scheduled to be induced on Wednesday, but she wanted me to go ahead and come over to get induced today. And so they were like, okay, well, let's get this figured out. Go ahead and go wait back in the waiting area, and once we've got everything ready to go, we'll let you know. And so that's what I did. And Caleb got there in the midst of this. He thankfully had at least one change of clothes with him in his gym bag, because he goes to the gym on his lunch breaks, and so he had that with him. So he was okay to at least have one change of clothes with him, which was good. So he had changed in the car real quick, and then he came in, and we were sitting in the waiting area just kind of talking. I was texting some family members, and he was texting his, brother and sister. And we were all just kind of like getting everybody up to speed on what was going on. We were in there for a little while. Caleb went and he grabbed a couple of things from my car, like my water and phone chargers and stuff like that, because we already had the car seat and everything situated in the car, but basically what wound up happening is, thank God my father-in-law was off of work that day, so he came over to our house as soon as we let him know, and he grabbed the hospital bag for myself and then for Aiden, and then he and my sister-in-law came and picked up Caleb's truck and took that back to our house. So we just had my car in the parking garage, and then they brought over the hospital bags for us. So it was nice. It worked out very well. Thank God. So we were able to actually get our stuff over to us, because once Caleb and I were in the hospital, obviously I couldn't leave, but he could not leave as well due to everything going on with the virus still going on around us. And so we were in the waiting area. They called us back to one of the little cubicles to do the last little bit of paperwork as far as insurance goes and everything like that. And so we did all of that. As soon as we got finished up with that, they took us up to the labor and delivery floor. And so we got taken up there. They pulled me in first, and Caleb had to sit back in the waiting area. And they pulled me in. I got into a hospital gown, and then they got me on the bed. And they did this with Eliana too. It's not just because of everything going on with the virus, but before they allow whoever you're bringing in as your support system, the nurse and then the mama who is going to be delivering are in the room, and they ask you a few questions and stuff like that before they pull in whoever you're having come in with you. So they did that, and then they pulled Caleb in. And then once they got Caleb in there, they did my IV. I had to have a full bag of IV fluids in me before they could start the Pitocin. And so that's what they were doing. The nurse tried it in my arm, on my forearm initially. Did not work. I was so upset and sitting there thinking, please God, do not let what happened with Eliana happen this time around too. With Eliana, when I was delivering her, I was so dehydrated that my veins, they couldn't find them, and so they poked me all over my forearms, in my hands. I was so bruised when I went home, but thankfully the nurse, she tried it in my forearm. It did not work. And then she was like, I really don't want to put it in your hand, but I feel like I'm gonna have to, because I have really prominent, huge veins in my hands that stick out. And so she found one, and she was like, I'm just gonna have to do it right there. And so thankfully it only took a couple of times. It was really annoying having an IV in my hand, but at least it only took a couple of tries for her to get it in. And then she got me hooked up onto the monitors, of course, to monitor my contractions and then Aiden's heart rate. And we just kind of sat and hung out for a little while that was going on. Caleb ran down and grabbed the bags because his dad and my father-in-law had gotten there, so he went and grabbed those while I was still getting the IV fluids in me and everything like that. And then my doctor came in while I was still, right before they gave me the Pitocin, I feel like. And she came in and was just kind of explaining to us why she did what she did, and why she made the judgment call she made, which I was totally fine with. Because I had told her anyways that I wasn't wanting to go over 42 weeks. And so she came in and she was just like, you didn't have, the way she put it was you didn't have a non-reassuring test strip, in the sense of your baby looks okay, but you had a non-reassuring test strip in the sense of I didn't see enough variations to make me comfortable with letting you go home and saying, okay, let's come back on Wednesday to have this induction actually get done. So that's why she decided to just have me go ahead and come over and get induced. And then of course she was like, when you go over 42 weeks, you have the risk of stillbirth, you have the risk of meconium aspiration and different things like that. So it wasn't worth, obviously, me going home and taking those risks. It was just better for me to go in and just get induced, since I was already scheduled to do that in the next couple of days anyways. It was definitely nerve-wracking. My nerves were on edge. I was a little freaked out, just because I'm a big-time planner. I am a big-time person who likes to have control, and so it's really hard when giving all that up. I had been hoping and praying that on Tuesday sometime I would go into labor naturally, and that I wouldn't wind up having to be induced. But it all worked out the way it was supposed to in the end, and we were okay. So she came in, like I said, was talking to us. She basically told me that they were going to start the Pitocin, and then after they started the Pitocin, she was going to come in and break my water, because she just felt like that was really going to get things moving and put us at the area we needed to be at. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do whatever you need me to, and we're going to have the baby, obviously. So my nurse came in right after my doctor left, and then got the Pitocin started, because the IV fluids had already gone through. They probably took about maybe 45 minutes, an hour, something like that, to actually get into me. By the time that I got into the labor and delivery room, it was around 1:30. And so after leaving my doctor's office, getting situated, getting over to labor and delivery, waiting, and then all that kind of stuff. It had basically been a few hours, and so it was like 1:30 at that point when I got the IV, and then after that, like I said, it was about 45 minutes, an hour or so when they got the Pitocin going for me. And so I had kind of been contracting a little bit on my own. They weren't obviously like regular or consistent in a pattern, and they weren't growing in intensity. Otherwise, I would have not had to have had the Pitocin in the first place. But they did start developing a bit more of that consistent pattern once they actually got the Pitocin into me. And so once they did the Pitocin, probably about 30 minutes after they did that, my doctor came in and she broke my water. She was like, okay, I'm going to let you know things are going to get really intense at this point. If you want to get the epidural, I definitely recommend you doing it sooner rather than later. And then she was like, also, if we wound up having to do, an emergency C-section or anything like that, it would be better for you to have it in you sooner rather than later. I really was still in my mind hoping to do a unmedicated birth to where I could hopefully get through it all on my own. But I just think the combination of the Pitocin contractions and then also the fact that my water was broken, and at that point I was only about 3 centimeters dilated. They had checked me right before they started the Pitocin, and then my doctor checked me, of course, like when she was breaking my water, and I was 3 centimeters dilated, 60% effaced. And so I was kind of expecting that, my contractions were going to be probably about like 4 or 5 minutes apart. Of course, they were going to be lasting for like a minute, but I was going to have a good break in between to recoup, rejuvenate, and like be ready to tackle this next contraction that came on. And they lasted like that for a little bit. They were coming maybe every 3 minutes or so, but very quickly they kicked up in their intensity. They went just like from one to the next, where it was a minute apart, lasting for a minute. And they consistently stayed like that. And I had some contractions that were one right on top of the other, where I would have maybe like a 10-20 second break in between them, and then boom, there would be another contraction happening. And then I had several contractions where it was just like I had a contraction, it would end, and then boom, a whole nother contraction would be starting. So it definitely wasn't the like smoother, like, okay, I can ease myself into this. It was just like, nope, boom, you're in labor. We're going to be in full-blown transition mode here. And it was very, very hard. The contractions are definitely not like anything I have ever felt. They were 100 times more intense than what I felt when I was in labor with Eliana up until I got the epidural. And they were not what I was expecting that early on. I knew obviously at some point they were going to get that intense, but I thought I had some time to at least like get into a rhythm, get into a groove, figure out what was going to work to help me with coping with the contractions, to where when they got that intense, I would at least have some kind of game plan formatted to where I could tackle them and we could overcome this. But that did not happen. So I wound up asking for the epidural. And what they wound up doing, because they were so intense and because my contractions were like one on top of the other on top of the other, they turned the Pitocin off. She was like, okay, we're going to turn the Pitocin off until the anesthesiologist can get in here so you can have a bit of a break, hopefully like get them to slow down a little bit. And that did not happen. I was still, even after they turned the Pitocin off, I was still contracting like literally every single minute. And like I said, some right after the other, or with only like seconds in between them happening. And it was hard. It was so incredibly hard to deal with. I feel very bad for Caleb and the nurses, because I know I was just like, I was not coping with them well in any way, shape, or form. And so probably about, I'd say like 30 minutes or so after I asked for the epidural, the anesthesiologist came in, and then right after they got the epidural in, which was, again, just so hard because I didn't have a break in between my contractions. And especially for whatever reason, of course, it had to happen that way, that like when the anesthesiologist got in there and they were giving me the epidural, that was really when I was having some of the worst contractions I had felt so far, and they were back to back to back. And it was hard because like when they're giving you the epidural, you're on the bed, they want you in this like hunched over position, and they're putting a freaking needle in your spine, so like you don't want them to mess up. Obviously there's a lot of things that could go wrong, but you're in like the most intense pain with those contractions happening. So it was hard. That was probably like the hardest part of the entire labor and delivery process, was that, just because trying to sit still through those intense contractions happening. And like I said, some of them not giving me a break in between was a challenge. So I give a huge applaud to that anesthesiologist that I had. She was amazing. She worked so well with me. Again, I felt horrible. I was apologizing left and right just because I couldn't sit still. I kept moving because I just wanted some kind of relief from that pain that I was feeling, especially when I had the 2 or 3 that hit where they were horrible. Oh my gosh, the pain was unreal. And so she got me all situated with the epidural, and they checked me right after I think they got the epidural in, and I was at a 6. So I was 6 centimeters dilated at that point. And so they kind of gave us a break in between then. I think the nurse, and I just was kind of contracting, had to be just in the bed at that point. I think the nurse came in one more time before they did the shift change to check me, and I was at a 9. So I was 9 centimeters at that point. This all happened super quick because I think it was just the combination of the Pitocin contractions that got me started, and then also the fact that my water got broken, because they never turned the Pitocin back on. After they gave me the epidural, I was a little worried. I was thinking that my contractions were going to slow down, because I've seen that happen, at least in labor and delivery vlogs that I've watched where women have gotten induced. That contractions start slowing down after you get the epidural. So I was a little nervous, but mine didn't. Really at all. They were still coming very consistently, very regularly. So they never wound up actually having to turn the Pitocin back on, which I was kind of happy about, because I was really only on Pitocin for about an hour, if even that, throughout this whole labor and delivery process. And so I'm not gonna lie, right after I got the epidural, I started getting super shaky and a little panicky, and I think that was just me more so than the epidural, because of all the stress that I had been under from just the day and how quick everything was happening. It was a whirlwind for sure. I wasn't expecting things to move and go as fast as they did. And so it was definitely a big shocker and a little challenge to deal with. And so I think that's why I was so panicky. My body kept wanting to tense up. I could feel myself trying to go in and have a panic attack. So it was really hard trying to work through that and breathe through it. But we were okay. I made it, obviously, and I was all right. And I was super grateful to have Caleb there with me. He's the person who, when I'm having those kind of situations happen, always calms me down and helps me to just, level out and not go crazy. And so the nurses came in a couple of times just to check and make sure I was doing okay, see that, everything was going okay with the baby. And then when the shift change happened, so that's at 7. So that's 7 o'clock, the shift change happened, and my nurse that I had came in, and then the new nurse that was going to be taking over came in. The new nurse that was going to be taking over, she wanted to see where I was at. So they did check me again, and I was still at 9 centimeters. She was like, but you're so close. You've just got a little bit of cervix left. And so she was like, here's what I want to do. I want you to go ahead and push for me to see if we can get that last little bit of cervix to move with you pushing. And so that's what I did, and it wound up working. And she was like, yep, all right, your last bit of cervix is gone, and I want you to go ahead and keep pushing. Anytime you feel that urge to bear down and push, just go with it. I was really it was cool to experience this time, because when I had Eliana, when I got towards the end, I didn't know I was at the end, but my contractions had started coming back, so I pushed the epidural button like crazy, because they have a little button. Oh no, okay, I'm gonna have to take a pause and then be right back. Okay, had to go feed Aiden, got him resituated, but you're probably gonna hear him chatting and talking and grunting and stuff in the background, because he's a little more awake right now. But what I was saying was that when I had Eliana, I didn't know I was close to pushing, but my contractions had started coming back, and so they give you a button when they give you the epidural, and basically when you hit that button, it gives you more of the medicine. And so I had pushed that quite a bit because that's what the nurses had told me to do, to re-administer more of the epidural with Eliana. And so I felt nothing, and I was still numb for quite a while, even after delivering her. Whereas with him, I started feeling my contractions coming back again. They were a little more intense, but I could handle them. And so I was like, all right, I just had that inkling inside of me telling me, okay, don't hit the epidural button. You don't need to push it, just leave it alone. And so I didn't touch it. And I'm so grateful that I didn't, because literally right after I had those thoughts coming in of, man, I'm having those contractions come back, I should probably hit the button, is when the nurses came in and checked me, and then I wound up starting to push. And so it was kind of crazy how it happened. So like I said, this was 7 o'clock. So like I mentioned, 1:30 is when I had gone in and they started everything in the labor and delivery room. And we were at 7 o'clock and I was already at 10 centimeters and we were pushing. So it moved and progressed really fast. And even my pushing went really fast too, which, you know, they say typically happens with the second one. It didn't go as quickly as it did with Eliana, but it still moved pretty quick. And so I pushed for a little while. I pushed for longer with him than I did with Eliana. Eliana was literally out in like 4 pushes. I pushed one time with her and then the nurse was like, okay, let's call the doctor, let's get the doctor. And I pushed 3 more times and she was out. With him, it took a few more pushes. But the nurse said that was probably because because of what happened with her kind of helping like move my cervix with the push and everything like that. So she said that's probably why it took a little bit longer, but I loved all of my nurses I had throughout this whole, like the whole labor and delivery process. All of them were amazing. I really loved the one I had at the very end. She was awesome. She was actually a brand new nurse to the hospital, but like she did phenomenal and I was super comfortable with her. But she had me keep pushing and it was cool because like I could actually feel what I was doing. I could feel the urge to push. And stuff like that. And so it was just different since I didn't feel that with Eliana, and it was something that I was like, man, I'm not going to get to feel anything, you know, even with him. But I did. And so it was really cool. And so I pushed probably, you know, 3-4 times, something like that. And then the nurse was like, okay, go ahead, call the doctor. Let's get the doctor over here and get ready to go. I was so happy my doctor was still there. I have no idea if she was the on-call doctor that night or if she just knew that things were going to happen the way that they were, and so she stayed behind whatever the situation and the case may be. I'm so glad because I could not imagine any other doctor besides my doctor delivering my sweet baby into the world. And so I pushed a few more times and then my doctor got in there and they got everything situated for me to really start pushing and like it being go time. And so they, you know, kind of like resituated the bed the way that it needed to be in order for me to really push and for him to actually get here. Caleb kind of got situated in his position for like helping with holding my legs and stuff, and I was, you know, on my back in the curled up position that, you know, most women typically wind up pushing in to actually get the babies out. And so I pushed a few more times. She had to do an episiotomy on me. I found out afterwards when she was like stitching me up, she was talking with the other nurse and she said that if she hadn't done the episiotomy that I would have torn, but my tear would have been pretty bad. So, you know, I'm glad she did it. It wound up only being like kind of like a 2nd degree tear is what she had said. So it wasn't any worse than what I had when I had Eliana because I had a 2nd degree tear with her. And so she did the episiotomy, and after she did the episiotomy, I pushed 2 more times and then he was out. And so at that point it was 7:27 and our sweet little Aiden joined us in the world. He was 7 pounds, 13 ounces, 20 and a half inches long. And he came out screaming. His lungs were great. Nothing crazy happened with him. They put him on my chest right afterwards and were cleaning him up a little bit, and I was just like, it all just hit me, you know, when I had him there. Even like through pushing, I still couldn't believe, okay, I'm pushing, like he's coming. It was just, again, a lot to process because things move so quickly. I mean, Caleb and I both were expecting for me to be in labor well into like midnight, early morning the next day, not for me to be in labor for like 5.5, 6 hours, you know. It moved very, very fast. And so it finally just hit me. And of course, I was super emotional with it all. And then they took him and they put him on the little warmer and we're finishing cleaning him up and weighing him and everything like that. But we are so grateful and so glad that he is finally here and that our sweet little boy joined our family. My stay at the hospital was awesome. Like I said, my nurse team was great. I wound up not having to have any pain meds or anything like that throughout my recovery process. It's been a lot smoother this go around than it was with Eliana, and I'm very grateful for that. And I'm super grateful for just how God worked everything out. And it's just so prevalent to me how he was in the situation, even though things didn't work out how I had envisioned them and planned them in my head. That's okay, because it worked out the way it needed to. So I'm gonna go. He's not napping yet, so I'm gonna go grab Aiden so you guys can see him and kind of get a look at our sweet little boy who joined our family. So this is our sweet little Aiden. He is a month old now, like I said, and he is so strong, you guys. Oh my gosh, it like blows us all away. But Eliana was too. Like, these kids just have super strong necks. The sun's right there. I'm in front of the window right now for some good lighting for the video. And so, poor little guy, you having to squint, huh? but he is doing awesome. He's growing like a ragweed. His doctor, when we went in for his 2-week appointment, his doctor had said that because he was already at his 2-week appointment, he was 9 pounds 1 ounce and 21 1/4 of an inch. And so his doctor was like, he's growing so well and doing so good that like I don't need you back for a 1-month appointment. You guys just schedule his 2-month checkup and then we'll go from there. So of course, like, I was super happy to hear that. So our breastfeeding journey has been going great. I've been pumping a lot more with him, so I've got a good chunk of breast milk already stored up in the fridge, which makes me super happy, because I had like nothing with Eliana. I didn't even start pumping with her until like right before I went back to work. I was on maternity leave for like 3 months with her, and so right before I went back to work is when I started pumping to, of course, like have some in there for me going back. But I got a good chunk already saved up with him, so I'm super happy about that. So grateful that my milk came in, that it's been good, and that he's been getting what he needs and then some, and that I've had enough to be able to store some away on top of feeding him. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But that's going to be it for today, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I'm so grateful for you guys who have been following along with our little journey into our sweet little guy being here. I've got a couple of reviews and stuff like that I'm wanting to do that I'm hoping to get your way soon, a postpartum update and stuff like that too. So yeah, thank you so much again for watching the video. Again, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.